So even saying that, well, I had to say stop a number of times. And how I said stop I'll talk about, but when I came in, Dave gave me this PowerPoint of 2 slides with about 15 reasons of why I existed, why I was in there, and I had to measure to them. And a number of times I had to stop and say, hold on guys, that's not what you wanted, that's not the intent that you needed. And stop sometimes is quite frustrating for people because they have different other things on their mind, but I was always having to be the person who reflected back upon the intent, making sure that that intent transformed into success. So what do we have to consider? The value system that we work within, the attitude, change management, and the ego system. It was eco, but I actually think it's more of an ego system. There's so many egos in a project that you have to deal with. And as a coach, you have to figure out how to deal with each one of them individually. So for values, we have people, collaboration, honesty, and trust. Change management, flexibility, agility, and visibility. The attitude is the behavior involved throughout the team principles, lead by example as best we can. And the ecosystem, and that's basically everybody. So, the value system. Well, why are we talking about team values in Agile? It's because I need to be able to make my team work in a synergized fashion. I need to have a very close matrix of communication, of strength, because if something goes wrong, I need people to bond together rather than disperse. How did I do that? Well, one of the main things I used is the Kanban board, the task board, the story board, whatever you want to call it, where we had our stories on our left-hand side, the tasks we were working on, and this was in a common area, so everybody could see. And we actually identified the task per person as well. So why do I do that? Because I want some level of accountability. When you tell me what you're going to do, I want to see it reflected on a board, and then I can refer to that tomorrow. I want quality. We use red for defect cards. If I see an awful lot of red up there, I'm going to say stop doing new things. Our quality has been sacrificed for new things. Everybody, get those defects down. I want, I'll say if I say 10 defect cards, I'll say I want 8 of them gone before we start on the white again. And if someone talks to me in the next daily stand-up that they ignored what I said and continued on the white cards anyway, I'll challenge that, because I'll also refer to what the task that they said they would take on as well. So there's collaboration. I don't know how many times I've lost count where we've actually had decision making happening within 10-15 seconds, where somebody would say something and someone was able to answer it quickly. Or we would say, look, we need to take this aside and deal with it later. The collaboration was really there. We all worked together. Everybody listened and tried to make sure that we all worked together to have a successful outcome. And peer pressure, which to me is probably the most important. I don't want, and this is why I'm the green guy and I try and stand in a corner. You're not telling me what you're doing, you're telling your team. Please don't just look at me when you're talking, look at your team. That's why I try to avoid being the focal point. You'll see some coaches and they'll stand in the middle and everybody talks to them. Well, that's not what you're trying to achieve. And then you'll see on the outside I've got what in Scrum they call chickens. Basically, parties who are able to come and witness what's happening, but they're not part of the team, so they don't have a voice. They can talk to me afterwards and raise as many concerns as they want, but within a daily Scrum, they're only there as just to look, an observer. So this is part of our work, is that in our task planning session we break all our tasks down into increments of between 4 and 12 hours. So, and this is what's transferred onto the board. I do this together. We have every single competency working together in deciding what needs to be done. And this is sometimes difficult because the argument at the moment is, well, the testers don't need to be involved at the beginning because they have nothing to test. But I want testers there from the beginning because I want them to commit to the same amount of work as everybody else is. The commitment has to be joint. And as well as that commitment, I want them to actually to realise and actually understand what the work is about. If they come in at a later stage, well, they're going to miss all that, and there's going to be a learning curve in the back of it. I want my team from the day one to be together so that I can get the commitment and I can actually see them act as a team from day one. And this is all great, but there's two things that has to happen. You need to trust those people. You know, it's pointless trying to come up with some kind of open, way of seeing progress, but here you are, undermining it because you don't trust anybody, and you're going to not listen to what they say anyway and do your own thing. You're going to check some other way, or you're going to, after the daily stand-up, go to each person and ask them, can you say that again in writing? That's not what you're looking for. You need to be able to trust those people. If you don't have that level of trust within a team, well, it's not the time to start Agile. And it has to be an open friendship. I mean, I really need to be, as a coach, always having my hand out, willing to assist. I cannot be demanding, and I can't really have a baseball bat in that hand either, because I'm not going to get the commitment I need. And as a coach, that's sometimes really the hardest part, is even when you hear something that you really don't like, it's actually understanding it, accepting it, and then trying to change it rather than just saying no. And how did we do that? Well, we have our retrospectives at the end of every release. And in our retrospective, what I try to do to get values happening is that I ask for them. I say, what do you need? What do you want? And as a coach, I'll throw in a couple of carrots. If there's something I really don't like, I'll sneakily put it into the retrospective and get them to talk to it. But what I look for is I want the solutions to come from the team, and I just then work to that. Because then I will, instead of just making it something that they have to do, I'll become an intrinsic value within the team. I will just talk to the behaviour that we desire rather than what I'm telling them. And if I need to, before we actually do the retrospective, I will teach them a principle about what we're trying to do. We had an issue with our daily stand-ups, and before we broke down into finding out what the problems were with our daily stand-ups, I taught to what the principles of a daily stand-up include, and they worked from there. Okay, change management. Change management to me is the most important. This is the way you communicate upwards. This is the way you communicate to your PCB. If you do not have this, if you are not agile, if you cannot communicate to your stakeholders in an agile fashion. The first thing we do is we showed our burn downs, and what you can see is how our burn downs advanced over a release. At the start, we really didn't know what we were doing, but we pretty much got there in the end, and we did achieve a target. But we didn't hide this. We showed our PCB. We explained to the PCB what was happening. So when they saw that first report, rather than criticise us for it, I wanted them to ask, well, what was happening? Why was that the case? We could talk about learning curves. We could talk about infrastructure. We could talk about anything. We can give the reasons that they can assist and act upon to make the second release happen. I will also be asking for my project manager, my program director, to be taking on some action points to make this be a downward spiral. I'm not going to just hold the team accountable to this. I need everybody to be accountable to it, because in the end everybody influences progress.